Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be introducing today the Honourable Chris Alexander, Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. A number of the policies and procedures for immigration that we're discussing at this conference have been introduced or revised under his watch, and we're really pleased that our work speaks to these issues and that we can continue to have an impact by providing an evidence base for immigration policies and practices. What some of you may not know is Minister Alexander's diverse background and experience. Mr. Alexander worked for 18 years as a member of the Canadian Foreign Service, including postings at the Canadian Embassy in Russia and serving as Canada's first resident ambassador to Afghanistan from 2003 to 2005. He then served as Deputy Special Representative of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan from 2005 to 2009. Mr. Alexander returned to Canada in 2009, and in 2011 he was elected as Member of Parliament for Ajax Pickering and served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence for 2 years. He became the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration in July of 2013. It's a pleasure to have Minister Alexander with us here today and to have the opportunity to hear him speak on issues that are so central to what we're talking about here at this conference and so central to the work of the Pathways to Prosperity. Minister Alexander.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Bonjour tout le monde. Quel beau groupe que vous faites ici. Real pleasure to be with you in Montreal. Thank you for coming together in the context of this conference, which has really one of the most exciting themes that I can imagine, because it is Pathways to Prosperity. We all understand the success for Canada, success for immigrants has to involve that prosperity that people crave when they come here, and that is, after all, an opportunity that Canada affords to all of us. But to get there involves sacrifice. It involves hard work. It involves adaptation. It involves all of the rites of passage that immigrants go through. And to see you sitting here in a spirit of research, in a spirit of innovation, talking about how we can make that, how we can come together to make that prosperity a reality for more immigrants faster is truly exciting, because that is at the center of our attention in Ottawa as we discuss these issues in my department and across government, and I think across Canada. And we cannot do it without you. We cannot do it without better research. I hope we will be able to say, we'll be able to continue to say that Canada boasts the best research in this field. I'm going later this week, as Corinne knows, to Paris for a discussion in the OECD of migration issues. I mean, we really consider them immigration issues, but all the issues faced by refugees, asylum seekers, economic migrants around the world, to co-chair a discussion of these issues with the Secretary General of the OECD that will involve all the members of that organization, 38 strong, because, and we have been asked to do this precisely because Canada is an example, not a perfect example, very much a work in progress, but an example of relatively recent strides having been made towards making immigration programs effective in the 20th century, towards making the partnership that has to underpin immigration strong for this new world, brave new world that we're in, of relative economic strength in Canada, economic fragility in many parts of the world, but above all, a need for partnerships. And those have to be partnerships among all levels of government. They have to be partnerships, obviously, with service providers, which so many of you are, and you are recognized for your excellence globally. But we need, all of us, to strike partnerships that go even beyond the usual model partnerships with employers, partnerships with municipalities, partnerships with communities in all the forms they take in this country, including remote and small communities, which sometimes have the greatest, the most acute need for immigrants, for specialized skills, and making that match with a faraway employer in a hard-to-reach part of the country where the roads and the airport are frozen half of the year. You know how difficult it can be. So we are, with inspiration and advice from all of you, trying to reforge those partnerships, put them on a broader basis than ever, and make them work more effectively than ever. And I'd like to congratulate all of you, but especially Shirk, for funding the initiative in which you are all participating. We don't always get credit for it, as the Government of Canada, for these investments in NSERC, in Shirk, in the Canada Council, in the Institutes of Health, in fundamental research and applied research across Canada, in centers of excellence, in Canada research chairs. But we have done a lot of it, and we will continue to do more because we believe in science-based, research-based policy, and certainly our reforms in immigration are a case in point in that respect. I'm particularly excited that everything you're discussing is on our agenda, central to our agenda, as we move forward with immigration reform, regionalization, evaluation strategies, M&E, northern, smaller and remote communities, l'immigration francophone, je vais en parler un peu plus tard, c'est une de mes passions, the agency of the future, large-scale data sets, and how we use them to drive immigration reform in the future. But let me, before taking your questions, give you a quick overview of where we stand on the path towards a 21st century, fully reformed immigration system in Canada. We all know what drives more people than ever to want to come to this country. It's the fact that we are an advanced economy, an economy known for high income, for the opportunity to work in your profession and get more recognition and more compensation for it than in many other parts of the world. But at the same time, we're an emerging economy. We're a country that is growing. We're a country where whole sectors and regions are on the verge of being opened on a scale that we haven't seen before. And that has always been our story. With our 10 million square kilometers, we have always had enormous potential that had yet to be unlocked. That remains the case today. But I don't think the relative advantages of Canada, our position in the world next to the United States, our access to other markets, our skilled workforce, our low crime rate, the quality of life in our cities, have ever set us apart from the rest of the world, even our close peers, as much as they do today. And that represents an opportunity for us in terms of immigration, the opportunity to really be selective, to take those skills at all levels, across all occupations that we truly need, and put them to work. But it's also a responsibility. Responsibility to use the resources we have, to use the strength of our diversity, to use the strength of our economy, fueled by immigration in many respects, to give back to the world, to meet the needs of refugees, resettled refugees, to be at the forefront of asylum reform, and to be generous on a scale that is justified by our weight and the expectation and our reputation in the 21st century. So how are we doing this? Well, first, at the center of the reform is the new system that you all know is coming on January 1st, and I'm almost tired of mentioning it because we haven't pressed the on switch yet. It's still coming, but we're only 1 month away from the advent of express entry. And you know that this is not a uniquely Canadian innovation. There are about 10 countries that have something like it. I guess 3 or 4 that have something closely like it. 10 countries have point systems. 3 or 4 countries have online pools of candidates that are ranked and sorted on the basis of those points to generate a ranked, merit-based list population of candidates for immigration who can then be invited to apply, and in whom we can immediately have the highest confidence that these are the people we need. And we can concentrate, instead of just processing every application that came along, we can concentrate those precious processing resources. And processing doesn't get easier in the era of terrorism and Ebola and health concerns of all kinds. It is complicated, but we can concentrate those resources on people who really have the highest probability of success in Canada. And that's what we're doing with Express Entry. What is new about it? It's online, no more paper applications for economic immigrants. It's faster, 6 months or better. It's recruitment-based. We're not just processing applications that we receive, we're recruiting on the basis of objective criteria the people that are most needed region by region, sector by sector, occupation by occupation. And finally, and most importantly, it is partnership based. We're inviting employers. I think municipalities too, they won't have direct access, but they'll be able to work with employers and provinces to have access, certainly the provinces and territories, to have direct access, to put their provincial nomination into Express Entry, to put their whole PNP program into Express Entry eventually, and to help us make everything go faster and help make sure that a larger number of immigrants are coming, not just because we like their human capital, and we've evaluated the human capital that they represent. We like their language skills, their competencies, their experience as we've evaluated them. But a larger than ever share are coming with those attributes, but also with a job offer and also with the vote of confidence of the province and territory that they're going to, a provincial nomination, which means the partnership that leads to success is already there. The job, the support, the services, as well as the human being who is equipped to succeed in Canada by education and by work experience. So Express Entry is absolutely a watershed. We're confident it will work. It is already working in a kind of beta version. January 1st will be the first day for individual candidates to create a profile. Later in January, they'll be able to get into Job Bank. Later in the first half of this year, employers will start to be able to see those people and literally offer them a job, make them a job offer, either with an LMIA or without. What does this mean for refugees? Well, I think it means, given the quality of people we're getting as economic immigrants, given the speed that we'll be able to work, we will be able to continue devoting more resources to the resettlement of refugees than we have done in the past. That's certainly our plan. A gently upward pointing curve for the resettlement of refugees. We've gone from 9,000, 10,000 in recent years through 11,000, 12,000 last year and this year. We hope to resettle 14,000 privately sponsored and government-assisted refugees, and then in addition to that, 10,000 or so asylum claimants, and in addition to that, roughly 5,000 from our humanitarian program. So larger scale immigration in 2015, moving from 260 to 280,000, comes with larger scale commitment to our humanitarian obligations. And I think that's very important for all of you, because settlement services do need to be concentrated on those who face multiple barriers. Those who come with better language training, who come with a job offer, who come with their credentials already recognized in Canada. We won't need to see them much in our offices, in your agencies. We do want to see them. We do want them to be informed. We do want them to feel welcome. But then off they go to start their lives. The refugee widow from Somalia, or the 8-member family from Kandahar that's been through harrowing experiences, they will need that extra support. They will face the multiple barriers to get into education, to get into work, on which we will need to concentrate our efforts. And then Express Entry, very simply, is accompanied by two other major focuses. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't include all other programs. It's the Canadian Experience Class, it's the Provincial Nominee Program, to the extent it grows beyond the 49,000 that will still be delivered next year in the old way. And it's the Federal Skilled Worker Program, Federal Skilled Trades Program, our core economic programs, all of which are strong, several of which are growing next year. But we need to work upstream of Express Entry around the world to reach people, to bring the message of what Canada has to offer, a factual message, a fact-based message, not the message that unregistered, fly-by-night immigration consultants in faraway countries are delivering. We have to punch through the misinformation, unfortunately, that is still out there in this unregulated industry around the world that promotes Canada. We have to show that there is hard information, there is real orientation that can be delivered long before people set foot in Canada. And that involves promoting Express Entry in our programs. That involves recruitment by our global network, which I hope will be less focused on processing and more focused on going after the specific skills and talents that we need in Canada, and connecting those people to Express Entry and showing them that the process can move much faster than it has in the past. Il s'agit aussi de nos courants d'étudiants qui viennent au Canada. On a dépassé les chiffres d'étudiants étrangers traités pour venir au Canada en 2013, déjà cette année au mois de septembre. That means last year we brought 116,000 new international students. This year we reached that number in September. So we will be higher by the end of the year, considerably higher. The students that are now here, 300,000 plus, are among our most attractive potential pools of recruitment for immigrants. When they go on to work for a year, as they have the right to do, most of them, they qualify for the Canadian Experience Class, which is our fastest growing program. Il y a aussi la réforme des travailleurs temporaires. Il fallait donner priorité aux Canadiens et Canadiennes, et je pense que la réforme a marché à cet égard. Et lorsqu'il n'y a pas de Canadiens pour combler un poste, il faut avoir recours aux travailleurs temporaires. Mais si c'est un travailleur temporaire qui comble un poste vraiment qui va exister pour des années ou des décennies à venir, il faut essayer de garder cette personne au Canada. Et les travailleurs temporaires représentent aussi un grand bassin de recrutement potentiel pour nos immigrants. And then there, of course, are pre-arrival services, which have to involve increasingly language training before arrival in Canada, job fairs before arrival in Canada, visits by employers to those parts of the world where we're all trying to recruit. All of this is going to be an increasing area, as you know, of investment and focus for all of us, without taking away from the quality of service that we provide inside Canada. And recognition of foreign credentials is also part of that upstream equation. Finally, downstream, after we've recruited, after we've processed an application within 6 months, after the individual or the family has arrived, we need settlement services of quality. We need to attend to the language challenge of spouses or those who haven't arrived with the tools they need to integrate quickly, to access services. We need welcoming communities. We have that reputation, not just in our big cities, not just in our small cities, but increasingly across the board. We need to keep promoting that. It's part of the demographic and workforce solution for every community across Canada. And then, of course, we need to maintain that relentless focus on connecting immigrants to available jobs. It's interesting, immigrants are in some ways easier to connect because they're more mobile. You know, some will go where their family is or where they think their community is focused, but they are open, if they hear about the job, to going to rural Prince Edward Island or going to the Yukon. Who would have thought that the Filipino and Chinese communities of the Yukon would be leading the way to the growth of that territory in the 21st century? It's wonderful to see. And une immigration francophone au Yukon aussi, ou une migration, surtout du Québec, Donc le profil même de nos communautés lointaines est en train de changer de façon dynamique grâce à l'immigration. Then beyond jobs and the workforce, we need to think about integration. This is where your research comes in. Obviously, the school system is sine qua non, absolutely essential, probably our most powerful tool for integration, both of parents and children. But we need to keep working on those winning formulas of partnership with school boards. There are schools that, or school boards that haven't had many immigrants, that don't know how to do it. We need to reach out to them and help them jump into the immigration game and the integration game at a high level, benefiting from the very positive experience we have in so many parts of the country. And then there's the question of citizenship. We were reviewing an OECD report that will be released at the forum. Canada still has far and away the highest level of naturalization, the highest number of immigrants who go on to be Canadian citizens. And that is in spite of all the measures we've taken to ensure the integrity of our citizenship programs, to ensure that the value of citizenship that Canadians sense is fully reflected in the programs and in the requirements. We want new Canadians to develop that sense of belonging, that commitment to Canada, that connection to Canada, that knowledge of Canada sooner rather than later. And as you know, we put many tools in place to help them do it, and they are doing it. But citizenship obviously is a continuing story of rights and responsibilities, principally of giving back. That's what makes Canada great. It's not our private sector, it's not our families alone. It is our civil society. It is all the things that you and we all do outside of our paid jobs, outside of our households, in so many different contexts, to make Canada strong, to make volunteerism in Canada among the strongest sectors anywhere in the world, the voluntary sector, and to make our citizenship strong. And then there's the question of, and let me conclude with these few questions, of retention. I must say, as minister, I do regret the fact that we don't know how many migrants stay. We've done some studies, but not as comprehensively as many of our peers. I think we need to invest more in that. Why do people move on? Who are we losing? From what kinds of communities? How could we reverse those trends? The skills mismatch is obviously not just a Canadian issue. It's everywhere. It's inside countries. It's among countries. But we want to be the country that starts to solve it the fastest. Il y a aussi le défi de l'immigration francophone. On vise 4,4% de notre immigration hors Québec, qui doit être francophone avant 2018. Et on se dote des outils pour accomplir cet objectif, mais ça prend du travail, ça prend un travail spécialisé de recrutement dans des bassins de candidats pour l'immigration francophone potentielle. And there's also the question of regionalization. We've seen the number of immigrants going to our TMV axis diminish continuously over the past 2 decades, from 90%, I think was the peak, over 90%, down to just low 60s today. And that's partly because of the growth of La Couronne, autour de Montreal, Greater Vancouver, Greater Toronto, but it's above all thanks to the dynamism of smaller cities and the popularity of immigration even in rural communities. We want to see immigration continue to become a reality for all of Canada. It certainly has been historically, but when you go into rural New Brunswick or Nova Scotia and hear that the first immigrants are arriving today in 130 years, and sometimes it's been longer than that in Newfoundland or parts of Quebec, it truly is an exciting story, one of innovation, one of partnership, one of success, but one of continuing challenge in a changing world. Merci pour la possibilité d'être avec vous et je suis ouvert à vos questions.